Hi guys, and welcome to Quiet Voice Podcast channel. Tonight we step into a rainy Mississippi evening in 1845, where a small slave cabin waits beside a muddy path, its chimney breathing a thin ribbon of smoke into the wet air. The storm has rolled in low and heavy, pressing the world close, softening the fields, and turning every sound into something deep and slow. You can almost hear the roof boards trembling, the firewood settling, the rain whispering over clay and cotton stalks. What did sleep feel like here, when the hearth was warm, but the outside world still held its grip? What small comforts could survive inside walls built by tired hands? So, before you settle into the story, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, and while the rain begins to fall, tell us in the comments where you're listening from and your local time. Now, dim the lights and let yourself stand at the edge of the quarter, where dusk has nearly folded itself into night. You walk slowly along a narrow path, your shoes sinking into soft Mississippi mud. The rain is not fierce yet, but it is steady, patient, and everywhere. It taps on your shoulders, beads along your sleeves, and cools the warm air around your face. The smell of wet earth rises strongly, rich with clay, crushed grass, wood smoke, and animals nearby. The cotton fields stretch away behind you, already dark under the swollen sky. In 1845, Mississippi is one of the great centers of the Cotton Kingdom, and that fact sits heavily over every cabin here. Cotton has made planters wealthy, banks bold, and steamboats busy along the river. It has also made countless enslaved people labour from first light to last usable dusk. You feel that truth in the ground itself. The soil is heavy with work. The path is cut by bare feet, wooden shoes as worn boots, and tired steps repeated every day. Somewhere behind the rain, a mule shifts in its shelter and gives a damp, unhappy snort. Even the animal sounds over it. Ahead! A cabin appears through the dimness, low and rough against the storm. It is built from hewn logs, with clay chinking pressed between the gaps. The roof slopes under wooden shingles, patched in places with whatever could be found. A small chimney leans at one end, made of sticks and mud, its smoke bending sideways in the wet wind. You pause outside the doorway because entering feels intimate. This is not a museum room, neat and quiet and kindly labelled. This is a crowded shelter, a family space, a workroom, a place of sleep, a place of worry. Its walls have heard coughing, singing, praying, scolding, laughter, and the silence that arrives when people are too tired for words. The air around the cabin is alive with small sounds. Rain falls from the roof edge in thin streams. Chickens complain from somewhere under a lean-to. A child coughs inside, then settles. From another cabin nearby, you hear a low voice humming, almost hidden beneath the weather. The tune bends and falls like a question. You step closer, feeling the damp wood under your hand. The door is simple, made from planks, darkened by rain and smoke. Its latch is humble, not much of a barrier against the world. Still, tonight, it marks a boundary. Outside are fields, overseers, laws, ledgers, and ownership. Inside is not freedom, not safety exactly, but something more human than the rouse. The cabin stands among others, spaced irregularly across the quarter. These quarters can vary widely from plantation to plantation, depending on wealth, region, and the choices of those in power. Some cabins are single-family dwellings, and others shelter more than one household. Historians still argue whether certain arrangements reflected planter control more than enslaved people's efforts to preserve family life. The answer, inconveniently, is probably both. A gust of wind lifts the rain sideways. It carries the smell of the fields, sour and green, mixed with damp ash. You hear the storm roll across the sky, not cracking yet, but muttering. It seems to crouch above the plantation, deciding how much weight to bring down. The clouds are low enough to feel almost personal. You enter with care, and the warmth touches you first. It is not full comfort, not the soft warmth of a bedroom prepared for rest. It is uneven, smoky, and precious. The hearth glows at the far side, where small flames lick around a few split logs. Heat presses against your knees and hands, while the room's corners remain cool and shadowed. Your eyes adjust to the interior. The cabin is dim, lit mostly by firelight, with a weak amber glow trembling along the walls. Smoke has darkened the rafters overhead. The floor beneath you may be packed earth, swept hard and smooth, or rough planks if the plantation owner allowed them. Either way, the floor feels close to the weather. The rain speaks through the roof. Every drop has a place. Some strike shingles with a flat tapping sound. Some slide down in watery trails. Some find weak points and fall into bowls, jars, or dark spots on the floor. There is a rhythm to it, almost domestic. Even leaks have manners, apparently. You breathe in slowly. The cabin smells of wood smoke, cornmeal, wet wool, old quilts, dried herbs, damp leather, and human tiredness. These are not romantic smells, but they are deeply alive. They tell of survival in small increments. A pot hangs near the fire, its iron sides blackened through long use. Beside it rests a wooden spoon, smooth from many hands. A woman sits near the hearth, mending something by the shifting light. You notice her fingers moving with careful economy, because cloth is valuable here. Nothing is wasted if it can be patched, turned, saved, traded, or hidden for later. Her shoulders slope with exhaustion, but her hands continue. Work does not end just because the field day does. A man sits nearer the wall, rubbing mud from his feet. The rain has soaked the hems of his trousers, and his shirt clings coldly around his back. He says little, but his breathing is long and slow, as though he is teaching his body not to complain too loudly. His palms are lined and rough. Cotton leaves their memory there. A child lies on a pallet near the warmer side of the room. Another child watches the fire with wide, sleepy eyes, resisting rest as children do everywhere. The little face shines orange in the hearthlight. Outside, thunder grumbles again, and the child glances toward the door. Someone murmurs reassurance without looking up from the needle. This cabin, small as it is, holds many kinds of time. It holds the long agricultural calendar of planting, chopping, picking, ginning, hauling. It holds the weekly rhythm of rations, chores, washing, mending, and worship when permitted. It holds the private clock of hunger, soreness, fear, affection, and small jokes whispered when power is not listening closely. You lower yourself near the wall, feeling the rough texture against your shoulder. The logs are not polished smooth. They catch on fabric, and the clay between them is cool to the touch. In places, bits of straw or moss are mixed into the chinking. The building itself feels handmade, not as a charming craft, but as necessity under pressure, outside. The plantation house may stand apart, higher, larger, drier, and brighter. Perhaps its windows glow beyond a line of trees, with glass panes catching the last evening light. Here, the glow is smaller, guarded by bodies that know its worth. A single fire can mean cooked food, dry socks, soot in the lungs, and one more night endured. A mainstream truth of this world is plain and terrible. Enslaved people in Mississippi in 1845 were legally treated as property, while living full human lives that the law tried to deny. The cabin is shaped by that contradiction. It is both a shelter and evidence of captivity. It is home, yet home under command. Rain taps harder now, almost applauding the roof's imperfections. A few drops fall into a tin cup with soft, bright notes. The sound is strangely pretty. You might almost call it music, though the roof certainly did not ask for a solo. The woman near the hearth shifts the cup slightly, making the dripping quieter. In the corner, a bundle of firewood leans against the wall. Some pieces are dry enough to burn well, while others smoke stubbornly. Firewood means labour too. Someone had to gather it, chop it, carry it, and guard it from rain. Warmth is never simply warmth here. It has a history in every splinter. You notice hanging from a peg a small gourd dipper, pale and worn smooth at the handle. Such objects are practical, but sometimes they carry meanings deeper than use. Gourds appear in African American folk traditions, songs, water vessels, and household life. A quirky tidbit lives there quietly. Some people even believed certain gourds could help keep milk or water sweeter longer. Although usefulness and belief often sat together without asking permission, the hearth pops softly. Sparks lift and vanish like tiny insects. The storm presses against the door, and the cabin seems to breathe around you. The people inside do not perform their lives for you. They simply continue. That is part of what makes the room feel so solemn. History is not always a battlefield or a speech. Sometimes it's a wet sleeve held toward a fire. You listen to the woman thread her needle again. The thread makes a faint rasp through the cloth. Her face shows concentration, and now and then she glances toward the children. There is care in that glance, quick as a bird. Care is one of the cabin's hidden structures, stronger than the logs, though less visible to anyone taking inventory. The man near the wall reaches for a piece of cornbread wrapped in cloth. He breaks it without ceremony and gives part to the wakeful child. The child accepts it with both hands. Food in this place is often basic, shaped by rations, garden patches, hunting, fishing, skill, and luck. Cornmeal, pork, greens, peas, molasses, and whatever could be gathered or grown might all matter. You feel the hunger in the room, not dramatic, but familiar and managed. It sits beside the fire like another person. Nobody speaks of it directly. The rain helps fill the silence. It makes the cabin feel farther from the plantation's demands, though only for a few hours. Night is not freedom, but it softens the edges. A faint smell of ash settles on your tongue. Your clothes absorb the smoke quickly. The firelight shifts across the faces before you, carving them into golden shadow. Their expressions are not simple. Weariness, caution, humour, tenderness, and irritation all belong here. Real people are never just symbols, no matter how eagerly textbooks flatten them. Beyond the door, water runs in little channels along the path. You imagine it passing between cabins, under fences, around roots, across the dark yard. The storm gathers all places into one sound. It falls on the big house roof and the cabin roof. It falls on cotton plants and horse stalls. The rain is impartial, which is more than can be said for the world beneath it. Somewhere nearby, a dog barks twice, then stops. The room becomes still for a moment. Everyone listens. This kind of listening is learned. It measures distance, tone, risk, and habit. Is it merely the weather? Is someone walking through the quarter? Is it nothing at all? Silence can be practical, not just peaceful. The child with the cornbread grows drowsy. Their eyelids lower, then lift again with heroic stubbornness. The woman gives a soft sound, half amusement and half command. It works better than a sermon. The child lies down beside the pallet, curling toward the warmth. Outside, thunder finally breaks, rolling wide and slow across the sky. You feel the sound in your ribs. The cabin answers with a tiny shiver. Rain thickens over the roof, and the fire seems brighter against the darkness. There is a strange comfort in being enclosed here, though you must never mistake comfort for justice. The warmth is real. So is the captivity beyond the door. Both truths share the same room. Historians continue to debate how much privacy enslaved families could claim inside cabins like this, because sources are uneven and often written by outsiders. Some accounts describe planters entering quarters freely, treating domestic space as part of their property. Other evidence suggests enslaved people defended boundaries through custom, community pressure, concealment, and quiet resistance. The room you sit in may hold all those tensions at once. A gust pushes smoke down from the chimney. Everyone coughs lightly. The man near the wall mutters something dry and wry about the chimney having ambitions it cannot fulfill. The woman smiles without looking up. The joke is small, but it loosens the air. Humour survives in places where comfort has been rationed badly. It is stubborn that way. The storm now covers the plantation in a deep watery veil. You can barely hear anything beyond the rain, the fire, and breathing. The cabin becomes its own world, with borders made of sound, your fingers warm near the hearth, while your back remains cool against the wall. That contrast keeps you awake and dreaming at the same time. You look around once more gently without claiming anything. The room is poor in possessions, but not empty of meaning. A shawl hangs near the fire. A wooden bowl rests upside down on a shelf. A scrap of blue cloth peeks from beneath bedding. Each object has passed through choices, hands, needs, and memories you cannot fully know. The rain does not ask permission. It keeps falling, softening the yard and darkening the logs. The people inside move more slowly now, drawn towards sleep by exhaustion and heat. The woman folds the mended cloth. The man stretches his legs carefully. A child sighs, already far away in dreams. The hearth glows lower, red at the heart. You remain in the warmth, listening. You feel the rough wall, smell the smoke, hear the roof dripping into a cup, and sense the weight of a world beyond the door. Here in Mississippi, in 1845, the storm outside is not the only pressure. Yet inside this cabin, beside this small fire, human life gathers itself close and refuses to disappear. The rain continues its patient work. The night deepens. The cabin holds. You sit where the warmth can reach your hands, and the cabin slowly reveals itself. At first, the room seems simple, almost bare, because poverty has a way of making space look quiet. Then your eyes learn the room's language. Every peg, shelf, bundle, bowl, and folded cloth begins to speak in low tones. The walls are close, and their nearness changes the air. You can feel bodies, heat, damp fabric, wood smoke, and tired breath gathered together. The cabin is not large enough for grand privacy. It is shaped for sleeping, working, nursing, mending, cooking, storing, praying, and enduring, all in the same narrow envelope of logs and clay. The packed floor feels cool beneath your soles. It has been swept with care, probably with a broom made from twigs, straw, or broom sedge. A careless eye might call it dirt and stop thinking. But the smoothness tells you something else. Somebody has worked to make even this floor orderly. The floor remembers hands. Near the doorway, wet garments hang from pegs, dark and heavy from the storm. The cloth smells of rainwater, sweat, smoke, and field dust released by dampness. One shirt has been patched at the shoulder with a piece of different fabric. Another has stitching so careful that the repair almost looks decorative. Necessity can learn elegance when it has no choice. Clothing in enslaved communities often came through annual allotments, coarse fabric, cast-offs, or homemade work. That is one plain historical truth of this room. Planters commonly distributed basic garments at set times, though quality varied wildly. A person might receive too little, too late, or nothing well suited to weather. The body learned to negotiate with thread. You notice a folded dress near a small wooden chest. Its hem is worn thin, but the bodice has been kept neat. Perhaps it is for Sunday worship, visiting, marriage rites, or a rare moment when labour loosens slightly. The cloth carries smoke and lavender, or something like lavender dried and tucked away. A tiny fragrance can become an act of dignity. The chest itself sits low and square. Made from rough boards, It may hold clothing, scraps of cloth, a ribbon, a spoon, papers if any exist, or keepsakes too personal for open view. The lid does not lock, yet the family treats it as private. Even without a lock, some things are defended by custom, glance, and silence. Historians still debate how often enslaved people possessed locked boxes, hidden compartments, or personal storage in cabins like this. Some archaeological finds suggest meaningful personal ownership within captivity. Plantation records, however, often reduce everything to lists, values, and rations. The argument is not only about objects, it is about how much room a person could carve inside a system built to deny personhood. The bedding lies along one side of the cabin. There may be a rough bedstead for adults, with rope supports, straw ticking, or a mattress stuffed with corn shucks. Children might sleep on pallets, folded quilts, or sacks near the hearth. The bedding smells faintly of smoke and damp wool. It's clean where care can make it clean. You lower your hand to a quilt edge. The fabric feels uneven, with soft worn pieces beside coarse newer patches. A red square sits near brown homespun. A faded floral scrap hides near indigo cloth. Perhaps each piece has a source, a memory, or merely a practical reason. The quilt does not explain itself. It only warms. Quilts in enslaved households have gathered many stories over time. Some later traditions claim that quilt patterns carried secret messages for escape routes. Scholars argue carefully about that claim, because evidence is thin and memories are complicated. Still, it is easy to understand why people cherish the idea. Cloth does hold messages, even when those messages are private. A cradle, or perhaps only a small sleeping box, rests near the warmer part of the room. It has been softened with rags and a folded cloth. The child inside breathes with that tiny uneven rhythm that makes adults listen without meaning to. Rain taps above the little sleeper. The cabin seems to bend around that fragile sound. A woman reaches down and touches the child's blanket with the back of her fingers. She is checking warmth. She does not need to speak. Such gestures are part of the room's furniture, steady as the shelf, constant as the hearth. The child stirs, then settles into the faint smell of milk, smoke, and washed cloth. At the far wall, a shelf holds a few wooden bowls, a tin cup, a gourd, and perhaps a chipped plate. Nothing matches. Matching things belong to people with room for preference. Here, usefulness matters most. A cracked bowl can still hold meal. A bent spoon still serves stew. A chipped cup still catches rain with admirable persistence. You see a small knife resting out of reach of children. Its handle is darkened by use, and the blade has been sharpened many times. It might cut meat, peel vegetables, trim kindling, open sacks, shape wood, and perform a dozen daily tasks. In a cabin like this, a tool has no luxury of specialization. It must be practical and patient. The rain grows heavier, and the roof answers with a busier pattern. A drop lands on a folded sack near the wall. Someone notices immediately and slides the sack aside. This is not panic. It is habit. The room has weather roots, dry zones, troublesome corners, and places where a bowl must stand during storms. Every home has its moods. Your shoulder brushes the wall, and a cool draft slips through a gap. The chinking keeps out much of the weather, but Noël. Clay cracks, wood shifts, rain searches patiently. Someone has stuffed moss, old cloth, or straw into one narrow space. That small repair says more than a polished doorway ever could. It says, "We manage." A small bundle of dried plants hangs near the rafters. It may be for seasoning, medicine, scent, or insects. The smell is faint and bitter, perhaps sage, pennyroyal, boneset, or some local herb known through practice. Enslaved healers often carried deep botanical knowledge, mixing African traditions, indigenous knowledge, and New World experience. The cabin holds medicine without ceremony. That knowledge did not always fit neatly into written records. Planters sometimes dismissed it, borrowed it, feared it, or relied on it. People in the quarters might know which leaves eased fever, which roots soothed pain, and which preparations were dangerous. A quirky household tidbit survives in such lore. Some believed placing certain bitter herbs near bedding could discourage fleas, though fleas remain deeply unimpressed. Near the hearth, a small pot sits tilted to one side. Its lid does not fit perfectly, and steam escapes through the gap. The smell is mild, starchy, and comforting. Corn, greens, peas, or a little pork fat might be inside. The scent mixes with ash until the air feels thick enough to taste. Hunger listens closely. A woman stirs the pot slowly, not because stirring is difficult, but because food must be made to stretch. A small meal can be lengthened with water, thickened with meal, brightened with pepper, or deepened with whatever the gardeners offered. Gardens near slave cabins were often vital. They provided food, pride, barter, and a little choice. You picture a garden patch outside, hidden now by rain and darkness. There might be collards, beans, squash, sweet potatoes, peppers, onions, or herbs. Some enslaved people sold extra produce, poultry, or crafts when allowed, earning small amounts of money. That permission was never the same as freedom, still within tight limits. People shaped economies of survival. A basket rests near the door, its weaving strong and practical. The reeds or splints have been worked evenly, each strip bending into place. Basket making can look quiet, but it carries skill through the fingertips. It remembers forests, riverbanks, and hands taught by other hands. The basket holds kindling now, but it also holds inherited knowledge. The room has almost no wasted space. Under the bedstead, you see folded sacks and perhaps a pair of shoes. Shoes matter enormously in wet seasons, cold mornings, and thorny fields. Many enslaved workers received poor footwear, and children often went barefoot. Wet leather smells sharp near the doorway. The smell is not unpleasant, only tired. One pair has been repaired with a scrap of hide. Another seems too large for the person who wears it. That detail feels almost unbearable, because discomfort can become ordinary when it repeats every day. A loose shoe rubs, a tight shoe punishes, a broken shoe changes a person's walk. The body keeps the account. Above the bed, hanging from a peg, is a small cloth pouch. It could hold needles, salt, a charm, tobacco, a coin, a keepsake, or nothing at all. The pouch swings slightly when thunder moves through the room. Nobody reaches for it. Nobody explains it. Some objects keep their privacy by being ordinary. Historians have found beads, buttons, pierced coins, shells, and other small items at sites connected to enslaved communities. Interpretations differ, and scholars still argue whether some items served mainly as adornment, spiritual protection, trade goods, memory pieces, or all of these together. The uncertainty matters. It reminds you not to make the past flatter than it was. The cabin's ceiling is low enough to make rising smoke linger. Soot coats the rafters in dark layers. The air near your face is warm, but your eyes sting lightly. Someone shifts a piece of wood in the hearth, and sparks lift upward. They vanish into the smoky dark. The fire sounds alive, chewing softly. A man works at a small piece of wood near the firelight. He turns it in his hands, shaving it with careful strokes. Perhaps he's making a peg, a toy, a handle, or a repair for some tool. His fingers move slowly from fatigue, but the movements are exact. Craft lives in the pause between demands. The shaving curls fall onto the floor like pale ribbons. A child watches them with sleepy fascination. The man gives the child one curl, and the child holds it as though it were treasure. It weighs almost nothing. Still, it becomes something. Children are gifted that way. They promote scraps into wonders without consulting the economy. A small mirror fragment glints near the chest, propped carefully against a folded cloth. Glass is rare enough here to feel special. In its wavering surface, firelight bends and faces blur. To look at oneself in such a mirror is not vanity. It is a quiet confirmation. I am here, I have a face, I remain. The storm rattles the door, and the latch lifts slightly, then falls. A draught brings in the smell of wet leaves and mud. The room tightens around its warmth. Someone places another stick on the fire, choosing a dry piece from the centre of the bundle. Heat rises at once, and the damp air retreats a little. You notice how everyone navigates the cramped space without colliding. Knees fold, shoulders turn, hands pass behind backs. A cup moves from one person to another. This choreography has no stage, yet it is exact. Crowded homes create a language of movement. People learn where to lean, where to sleep, where to keep from causing trouble. The cabin is spare, but it is not lifeless. Its roughness contains care, adjustment, memory, and skill. It holds objects shaped by pressure, but also by preference. A ribbon tied to a peg, a smooth spoon, a carefully swept floor, a patched quilt arranged with attention. These small choices do not erase suffering, or they refuse erasure. Outside, rain continues to drum across the roof, steady and close. Inside, the walls hold a smoky glow, a patched softness, and the quiet labour of being alive. You feel the damp edge of the doorway, the warm pull of the fire, the scratch of wool, and the low breathing of children drifting deeper into sleep. The cabin's rough timber walls no longer seem empty. They are crowded with touch, scent, sound, and intention. They hold what the plantation ledger cannot count. They hold the work of hands making shelter from too little. They hold ordinary things made luminous by need. And in the storm's deep hush, those things remain awake. Section 3. You draw closer to the hearth, where the room gathers itself around a red and golden centre. The fire is small, but it rules the cabin with a quiet authority. Its light decides where faces soften, where shadows deepen, and where sleep will come first. Its warmth reaches outward in uneven circles, generous to the nearest hands, stingy to the farthest toes. The hearth is made of packed clay and rough stone, darkened by years of smoke. Ash lies in grey folds beneath the burning wood, soft as old flour and warm below the surface. A black iron pot hangs from a simple crane, or perhaps rests on stones near the coals. Its lid trembles faintly when steam gathers inside. The smell rising from it is plain and comforting. Cornmeal, greens, a little fat, maybe beans softened by long simmering. Nothing announces abundance, yet the scent fills the room with a deep human promise. Something warm will pass from hand to hand. Something will settle the stomach. The storm may fuss outside like an unpaid overseer, but the pot has better manners. A woman leans near the fire and adjusts the pot with a folded rag. Her movement is quick, practiced, and careful. Iron remembers heat cruelly. She knows where to grip, when to turn, and how long to let the stew sit before it scorches. Cooking here is not separate from intelligence. It is judgment made edible. You hear the wood settle with a soft crack. Sparks rise, brief and lively, then disappear into the sooty throat of the chimney. Smoke pulls upward imperfectly, leaving a blue haze beneath the rafters. Your eyes water, and your throat tightens slightly. The warmth is welcome. Yes, but it always arrives carrying ash. A child near the fire rubs small hands together and watches the pot as though patience might hurry it. Someone gives a quiet laugh, low and kind. Hunger is serious, but children staring at supper can still be funny. The child shifts closer, then is gently nudged back. Fire teaches lessons quickly. Some lessons need not be repeated. In a Mississippi cabin in 1845, the hearth is often the centre of domestic life. It provides heat, light, cooking, and a place where people gather at the margin of a long working day. That is a mainstream fact, simple and important. Without the hearth, the cabin becomes colder, darker, hungrier, and far less livable. You watch hands move around the fire. One hand crumbles cornmeal into a bowl, another reaches for salt, guarded carefully because flavour is never casual here. Someone unwraps a small piece of smoked meat, its smell strong and precious. The meat is stretched through the pot, more memory than portion. Still, the broth listens and improves. A few onions or wild greens may have come from a garden patch, a ditch bank, or a wooded edge. Enslaved people often supplemented rations through fishing, hunting, gardening, gathering, and small trade when possible. These practices varied from place to place, depending on rules, geography, season, and risk. Survival required knowledge of land as much as endurance in fields. The hearth glows brighter as a dry split catches flame. Orange light opens across the cabin floor. The shadows of bowls, knees, and hanging tools tremble along the wall. You feel heat along your shins, while the back of your neck remains cool. The contrast is oddly soothing. The body accepts half comfort when full comfort is absent. Someone reaches for a small cake of ash-baked bread, cooked earlier in coals. Its surface is rough, lightly charred and warm enough to steam when broken. The inside smells of corn and smoke. It is not soft bakery bread, not delicate or proud. It is sturdy, plain, and useful. Honestly, it has no time for compliments. The bread passes from adult to child, then back again. Portions are measured without appearing measured. An older person receives a softer piece. A tired worker receives the thicker edge. The smallest child gets a bit dipped into broth. No one announces fairness, because fairness here is not a speech. It is a series of gestures. You notice how the fire changes voices. When the pot is moved, the coals hiss under a splash of liquid. When new wood catches, the flames murmur. When rain falls down the chimney path, a faint spit rises from the hearth. Each sound is small, but together they make a household music. It is almost a lullaby. The room smells stronger now. Steam loosens the scent of greens and fat. Damp clothing dries slowly, releasing the day from the cloth. Smoke settles into hair, blankets, and skin. You can feel the air as something layered, almost woven. Every breath takes in labour, weather, food, fire, and wood cut from somewhere nearby. A man sitting near the warmth holds his palms outward. The skin is cracked at the knuckles, with fine lines of dark soil that washing has not fully lifted. Cottonwork marks the body in stubborn ways, bending, chopping, carrying, and picking leaf aches that do not ask permission to stay. Heat gives temporary mercy. He turns one wrist, then the other, letting warmth enter the joints. He says little. Perhaps silence is easier than naming every soreness. The fire does not cure anything, but it loosens the grip of the day. There is dignity in that small loosening. There is dignity in resting without performing gratitude for too little. A woman tastes the broth with a wooden spoon. She pauses, thinks, adds a pinch of salt, then stirs again. That pause is expertise. Recipes may not be written, yet they are carried accurately through practice. The amount of water, the feel of thickening meal, the bitterness of greens, the strength of smoke, all are known through the senses. Historians continue to question how much African food knowledge shaped plantation cooking in different regions. Some ingredients and techniques clearly carried African influences, while local conditions and forced scarcity changed everything. Rice, okra, peppers, leafy greens, slow stews, and communal cooking traditions all complicate easy answers. Food history, like most honest history, refuses to sit neatly in one bowl. A quirky little detail rests in the ashes themselves. In many rural households, ashes were not mere waste. Wood ash could help make lye for soap, sweeten garden soil in careful amounts, discourage some pests, or preserve embers overnight. Ash looks like an ending, but domestic life keeps finding uses for endings. Very efficient of it. Near the fire, an older woman may be sorting something in her lap. Dried beans, perhaps, or small seeds saved for planting. Her fingers find stones, husks, and bad pieces with calm precision. She does not need bright light. Touch is enough. Her hands are archives, and the hearth gives them just enough glow to continue. The seeds click softly into a bowl. You listen to that sound beneath the storm. Each small tap suggests another season, another garden, another attempt to coax food from soil not owned by those who tend it. Seeds are humble things, yet they contain defiance by design. They intend to grow. That is their whole personality. A child asks something about the thunder, voice low and uncertain. An adult answers in a tone that makes the storm smaller. Perhaps thunder is wagons in the sky, or angels moving furniture, or clouds arguing like people with too much pride. The exact explanation matters less than the voice. Fear can be held gently. The hearth makes storytelling possible because it gathers faces. It gives just enough light for expression, just enough shadow for mystery. Around it, ordinary speech can become memory. Warnings can become tales. Jokes can become relief. Prayers can rise quietly while hands keep working. The fire is practical, but it also invites meaning. You see someone place a sweet potato near the edge of the coals. It will roast slowly, blackening outside, softening within. The smell will grow sugary and earthy, a deep scent that settles behind the eyes. Sweet potatoes were common and valuable in many southern diets. They filled bellies, stored well, and accepted smoke like an old friend. The pot is lifted away from direct flame. Bowls are arranged. The first serving is careful, because nobody wants the meal to vanish too quickly. Stim curls upward, touching cheeks and foreheads. The child receives a small bowl and grips it with both hands. Heat warms the fingers before food reaches the mouth. You feel the room become quieter as eating begins. Hunger narrows attention. Spoons scrape wood. A breath is taken between mouthfuls. Rain fills the pauses. No one wastes broth. The bread gathers what the spoon leaves behind. Even the smallest drips matter. Abundance may encourage carelessness, but scarcity trains the eye with tiresome dedication. The food is not luxurious, but it is living warmth. It enters tired bodies and becomes strength for another day. That truth is tender and bitter at once. The system demands labour, then allows barely enough to restore labour. Yet within that narrowness, people season, share, save, and transform what they can. The hearth witnesses that transformation. A bit of grease shines on the surface of the pot. Firelight catches it in tiny golden circles. The child watches those circles break apart beneath a spoon. The man near the wall eats slowly, perhaps to make the portion last. The woman serving waits until others have begun. That, too, is a kind of arithmetic. Your own hands, warmed now, feel the drying pull of smoke. The cabin's air wraps around your skin like a rough blanket. You hear the rain strike the roof in waves, softer when wind shifts, louder when clouds open again. Outside, the yard must be shining with puddles. Inside, the hearth draws the world inward. A coal falls from a burning log and lands near the hearth edge. Someone nudges it back with a stick. The movement is casual but immediate. Fire must be watched, especially in a room of wood, cloth, straw, and sleep. Warmth is useful, but never innocent. It can comfort, cook, destroy, or vanish. An adult leans forward and banks the fire slightly, pulling ash around the coals. This saves heat, controls flame, and prepares for the long night. Fire tending is a form of timekeeping. Too much flame wastes fuel. Too little leaves darkness. A well-kept ember can spare someone the labour of starting fire from nothing in the morning. In many households, preserving live coals mattered deeply. Matches were not always cheap or available, and flint, steel, tinder, or borrowed fire required effort. A neighbour might share embers, carrying them carefully from cabin to cabin. That tiny exchange could be ordinary kindness. Imagine borrowing fire. What a wonderfully dramatic way to ask for help. The hearth also draws boundaries between public and private feeling. Around it, people may speak softly of sickness, a missing relative, a troublesome overseer, a birth, a wedding, or a small plan. Yet words must be weighed. Cabins are close together, and not every listener is trusted. The fire hears more than it repeats. Scholars still differ on how to interpret the hearth as a place of resistance. Some emphasize cultural survival, family building, and independent household labor. Others warn that the same space existed under surveillance and material deprivation. Both views can be true. A warm room can still be inside a cage. History is rude enough to be complicated. The meal winds down slowly, bowls are scraped clean, rinsed sparingly if water is near, and set aside. The pot remains warm, holding whatever thin portion can be saved. A cloth covers bread fragments. Someone wipes a child's mouth with a thumb. The child objects softly, because dignity begins young and suspicious. The fire has settled into steadier coals. Flames no longer leap, but breathe low and blue at the edges. The room's warmth becomes deeper, less lively, more sleepful. Shadows stretch along the walls, and faces blur in the dim glow. You feel your own breathing slow. The storm outside continues, but it feels farther away. Still, the hearth never lets you forget its double nature. It is comfort made from labour. It is family gathered under constraint. It is smoke in the eyes and warmth in the bones. It is supper, medicine, light, danger, memory, and watchfulness. Its kingdom is small, but tonight, everyone in the cabin lives within its borders. You sit beside the coals and listen to them shift. The smell of cooked meal lingers with wood smoke and damp cloth. A hand reaches out to warm one last palm. A child's head lowers against a folded blanket. The hearth glows steadily, holding the centre of the room like a quiet red heart. You listen as the night gathers its many voices round the cabin. The rain has changed from a steady tapping into a deeper, fuller sound. It washes over the roof in long sheets, then breaks into scattered drops along the eaves. The storm does not hurry. It seems to have settled in, comfortable as an unwanted guest with excellent timing, inside. The cabin grows quieter by degrees. Speech falls into murmurs. Bowls stop moving. Cloth is folded and set aside. The small motions of the evening become fewer, slower, more careful. The room is not silent, because silence rarely belongs to wooden walls. Warm coals, sleeping children, and weather. Still, the human world lowers its voice. The roof gives the storm its own language. Rain striking shingles makes a flat, close sound. Rain sliding down the chimney mud makes a thicker patter. Drops falling into a cup make bright little notes, clear as tiny bells. Somewhere near the doorway, water finds the ground with a soft plunk. Each sound has a place. You feel the air cool near the floor. Warmth remains around the hearth, but the storm presses cold fingers through cracks and low gaps. The dampness touches your ankles first, then moves slowly upward. Wool and homespun hold the smell of wet weather. Smoke hangs above it all, faint and blue, like a tired curtain. Outside, insects have gone nearly quiet under the rain, on drier nights. The Mississippi darkness would be loud with crickets, frogs, and night birds calling from trees and wet places. Tonight, the storm muffles most of them. A frog tries a brief complaint from somewhere near a puddled ditch. Then even that voice gives up. This region in 1845 is a place of river systems, bottomland, heat, mud, and sudden weather. Plantations along the Mississippi and its tributaries depend on fertile soil and brutal labour. Storms can flood fields, delay picking, damage roads, and turn yards into sucking clay. Weather is not scenery here. Weather joins the labour schedule like a rude supervisor. A gust of wind presses against the cabin wall. The logs creak softly, and the door gives a wooden sigh. Someone opens their eyes, listens, then lets them close again. This habit of listening runs through the room like a second pulse. The night may be restful, but it is never entirely careless. The children sleep nearest the warmth, curled beneath quilts and worn cloth. One child breathes through a stuffy nose, making a small whistling sound. Another turns over, dragging a blanket with a faint rasp against the floor. A tiny hand slips out from the bedding and rests open in the firelight. It looks impossibly trusting. A woman rises quietly and tucks the hand back beneath the cloth. Her feet know where every object sits in the dimness. She steps over a basket, avoids a wet place, and lowers herself again without disturbing anyone. The movement is so smooth it feels practiced by generations. Care learns to move without sound. Thunder rolls above the cabin, wider now, spreading across the sky rather than cracking straight down. The sound enters through your chest before your ears fully understand it. The youngest child stirs and makes a soft, frightened noise. A low voice answers at once, gentle and sleepy. The child settles. The storm has been translated into safety, at least for a breath. Night in the quarters can bring a difficult kind of privacy. Planters and overseers may be farther away, but control does not disappear with darkness. There may be patrols, rules, passes, punishments, dogs, and the constant knowledge that movement is watched. At the same time, evening can allow worship, talk, courting, visiting, and rest. Freedom is not present, yet human life widens where it can. Historians still argue about how often enslaved people travelled between cabins or plantations at night, because laws and practice did not always match. Some records emphasise harsh restrictions and patrols. Other accounts reveal visiting networks, secret gatherings, and determined mobility. The truth shifts by place, owner, season, and courage. History refuses to wear one tidy coat. From outside comes a faint splash, then another. Perhaps someone crosses the yard between cabins, carrying something under a cloth. Perhaps it is only runoff from the roof striking a barrel. Everyone inside seems to hear it. Nobody speaks. The fire clicks once, sharply. A dog barks in the distance and the sound fades under rain. You become aware of the cabin's darkness beyond the coals. Corners hold shapes rather than objects. A chair becomes a crouched figure until the fire shifts. Hanging clothes become shadows with shoulders. The mind is very talented at inventing visitors, which is unhelpful but apparently traditional. Then a cold brightens, and the room becomes ordinary again. The smell of the storm deepens as water seeps into wood and earth. Wet clay has a mineral scent, cool and almost metallic. Damp straw smells sweet at first, then sour underneath. The smoke makes everything bitter at the edges. Your skin feels sticky from humidity and soot, while your palms remain dry from the fire. A man sits awake with his back to the wall. He is not fully guarding the room, and not fully resting either. His head lowers, then lifts. His eyes move toward the door whenever the wind changes. The storm gives cover to many things. It hides harmless sounds and serious sounds with equal enthusiasm. Very democratic of it. Somewhere beyond the cabin, a branch falls with a muffled crack. The sound is not close, but it is clear enough. Rain follows it in a rushing spill from leaves. The man's hand tightens, then relaxes. No one moves. The storm continues, apparently pleased with its little performance. The children keep sleeping. You hear water dripping into a small vessel near the wall. It has a rhythm now, slower than breathing. Drop, pause, drop. The sound could become irritating in daylight, when patience is already spent. At night, it feels almost hypnotic. The cup receives each drop without complaint. A philosopher could learn from a cup, though the cup would not brag. The cabin roof, rough as it is, protects what it can. Many slave cabins were built cheaply, with materials and workmanship varying across plantations. Some were stronger and more weatherproof, others were draughty, crowded, and quickly repaired. Archaeology and written accounts show wide differences, though almost always under conditions shaped by inequality. The storm exposes those differences without needing words. A woman shifts on the bedstead, and the ropes beneath the bedding creak. Rope beds require tightening, which is where the old saying about sleeping tight is often linked. Though the phrase has a more complicated history than people like to admit, the idea still fits the object. Loose ropes, sag, tight ropes support. Sleep, naturally, prefers engineering. Your ears begin sorting the room from the storm. There is the breathing of sleepers, each person distinct. There is the soft grind of someone's teeth in dreams. There is the faint crackle of coals under ash. There is the occasional hiss when rain slips too far down the chimney. The cabin is a small orchestra of endurance. Outside, the path between cabins must be nearly black. Puddles would catch the faintest firelight if the door opened. Mud would cling to ankles. The air would smell of pine, wet grass, animals, and smoke flattened by rain. Beyond the quarter, the fields would be invisible, though their presence would remain. Work does not vanish simply because you cannot see it. A lull comes in the storm, sudden enough to feel like listening. The roof softens, the dripping continues. From the trees, a night bird calls once, another answers farther away. Then frogs begin again cautiously, as though checking whether the sky has finished shouting. The world outside returns by layers. It has been waiting politely, or perhaps hiding. The lull allows another sound to emerge. A low hum begins near the bedding, not quite a song, not quite a prayer. It may be meant for a child, or for the singer's own nerves. The melody moves slowly, with small turns and a heavy sweetness. Words are hard to catch. The feeling is not. Music in enslaved communities carried work rhythms, worship, memory, coded feeling, grief, humour, and hope. That is one of the most important truths of this night sound. Some songs were shared openly, while others belong to particular gatherings or moments. The voice you hear is soft enough to remain inside the cabin, yet deep enough to hold a world. Scholars continue to debate how much specific African musical structure survived in different plantation settings by the 1840s. Call and response, bent notes, layered rhythms, and spiritual expression all mattered. But tracing exact origins is difficult. Forced migration, regional mixing, and Christian influence change the sound. Still, the human ear hears continuity in the bend of a note. The humming fades when the rain rises again, not stops exactly, but dissolves into weather. A child sighs, turns, and sleeps more heavily. The coals settle lower, their light now red and soft. Your eyelids grow heavier, though the room still asks to be heard. Night here is not empty. It is full of guarded listening. A damp draught crosses the floor and moves the ash slightly. You feel it along your feet. Someone pulls a blanket tighter around their shoulders. The blanket has a rough edge that scratches the chin, but warmth matters more than refinement. Softness is welcome when it comes. Rough comfort is still comfort, though it could be less dramatic about it. A sudden flash brightens the cracks around the door. The room appears for one instant in pale silver instead of fire orange. Every object looks strange, almost drawn in sharp lines. Then darkness returns, and thunder follows several heartbeats later. The storm is moving away, perhaps, or simply pacing itself for effect. The cabin waits through the sound. Nobody speaks until it passes. Then someone exhales, long and quiet. You notice how many emotions can fit inside one breath. Weariness, relief, annoyance, prayer, and the desire not to wake the children all share that single release. Human beings are crowded even inside themselves. Rainwater runs from the roof in steadier streams now. It splashes near the threshold and sends up the smell of fresh mud. The door's lower boards are dark with damp. A thin line of water creeps inward, but stops where the floor rises slightly. Someone must have learned that slope through many storms. Homes remember weather better than guests do. The man awake by the wall finally lowers his head. Sleep approaches him cautiously, like an animal that has been startled too often. His breathing lengthens. His hands remain loose but ready. The woman near the children is already still, one arm curved toward the smallest body. The room arranges itself around vulnerability. You sit in that shared darkness, letting the storm's rhythm become slower than thought. Rain on wood, breath under quilts, coals under ash, water in a cup, frogs beyond the yard, a branch dripping somewhere unseen. Each sound marks the cabin's place in the night, held between weather and watchfulness. The storm outside is no longer only danger or discomfort. It has become a covering sound, a heavy curtain drawn across the plantation. It hides the fields. It blurs distances. It keeps most people indoors. For a little while, the world beyond the door feels less sharp, not gone, just softened by rain. You feel the rough wall against your back and the uneven floor beneath you. The air smells of smoke, damp wood, clay, wool, and cooked greens gone faint. The hearth glows in its red sleep. The cabin breathes around you, guarded and tired, while the storm keeps talking to the roof in 1,000 patient voices. You begin to feel the day still living inside the bodies around you. It is there in the careful way someone stretches a leg, as though the muscle might object. It is there in a shoulder lifted slowly beneath a patched shirt. It is there in the quiet pressure of hands held near the coals, palms open, fingers slightly curled. The field has followed everyone indoors. It hides in the wrists, lower backs, knees, and necks. It clings beneath fingernails and settles into the skin's small cracks. Even after washing, the smell of cotton leaves, damp soil, sweat, and crushed weeds remains. The body keeps what the basin cannot remove. It keeps a record. You watch a man roll one shoulder forward, then back. His face does not change much, but the movement is guarded. He has likely spent long hours bending, lifting, chopping, or picking, depending on the season. In Mississippi's cotton country, enslaved laborers often worked in gangs under supervision, with pace and punishment controlled by others. That fact shapes every breath in this cabin. A woman rubs her forearm with the heel of her hand. The motion is firm, almost impatient, as though she is kneading soreness back into obedience. She has not only worked in fields, most likely. She has also cooked, carried water, cleaned, cared for children, mended cloth, and perhaps tended a garden. Labour changes clothing at dusk, but it does not vanish. The firelight reveals scratches along the backs of hands. Cotton bolls can cut skin when dry, and tools can blister even practiced palms. Mud can pull at ankles until every step feels argued. The day has been made of repeated motions, and repeated motions become a language of pain. No one needs to translate it. A child, still awake in a dreamy half-state, reaches for an adult's hand. The adult lets the small fingers explore the rough palm. The child presses at a callus with solemn curiosity. It is a strange inheritance to study so young. The adult smiles faintly, perhaps amused, perhaps tired beyond amusement. Both can be true. The cabin's warmth works slowly on aching joints. Heat enters skin first, then muscle, then something deeper that feels almost like permission. You sense shoulders dropping by tiny degrees. Breathing slows, feet extend closer to the hearth, careful not to touch stray coals. The room becomes a place where the body may admit weakness without being accused of idleness. That admission matters. Enslavement demanded labour while denying full humanity. But bodies refused to become tools. They hurt, healed, hungered, loved, aged, remembered, and resisted. In this room, a sore back is not just soreness. It is evidence of work taken by force. it is also evidence of a person still present inside that taking. Someone unties a cloth wrapped around a wrist. Beneath it, the skin is swollen, perhaps from strain, perhaps from an old injury. An older woman leans close to examine it. Her fingers move gently along the joint, reading heat and tenderness. She says something brief, practical, and not especially impressed. Pain, apparently, must still behave itself. A small pot of grease or salve appears from near the hearth. It may be made from animal fat, herbs, or some household preparation whose recipe lives in memory. The smell is sharp, green, and smoky. She warms it between her fingers before rubbing it into the wrist. The touch is careful. Care is medicine too. Enslaved communities often developed and preserved healing practices through shared knowledge. People used roots, leaves, poultices, teas, massage, rest when possible, and spiritual comfort. Some remedies came from African traditions, some from indigenous knowledge, and some from European rural practice. The cabin becomes a clinic without calling itself one. Titles are scarce. Skill is not. Historians still debate how much plantation medical care depended on enslaved healers, especially when written records favoured white doctors and owners. Some evidence shows planters consulting or relying on enslaved nurses and herbal specialists. Other records obscure them almost completely. The uncertainty is frustrating, which is history's way of reminding everyone to be humble. A quirky detail rests in the salve's little container. It might be a reused shell, a broken cup, a horn, or a small gourd cut smooth. Rural households saved containers with heroic dedication. A cracked teacup could retire from polite service and begin an excellent second career holding grease. Honestly, that is more reinvention than most people manage. The man with the sore shoulder reaches for a strip of cloth and wraps it around his hand. The cloth is stained from the earlier use, but folded neatly. Wrapping may protect blisters, support a joint, or keep a cut clean enough to avoid trouble. There is no careless waste here. Even pain requires supplies. You notice the feet near the hearth. Some are bare, some in worn stockings, some recently freed from stiff shoes. Mud has dried along ankles in pale streaks. A woman scrapes a bit away with her thumb, then wipes it on an old rag. Feet carry the truth of distance. Fields, wells, paths, cabins, barns, and yards all meet there. The floor is cool enough that toes curl slightly away from it. A child's foot rests against an adult's calf, borrowing warmth without negotiation. Adults often become furniture to children, which is rude and deeply human. The adult does not move. Perhaps the weight is welcome. Perhaps it is simply too small to refuse. Outside, the storm presses rain into the yard, but inside the weather has become physical memory. Damp clothing tightens sore muscles. Wet shoes stiffen. A draught can find the very place that already aches, because draughts have a wicked sense of direction. Someone shifts a blanket around the shoulders and mutters at the wall, as though the wall might apologize. The wall does not apologize, it creaks. A woman begins to stretch her fingers one at a time. She pulls each gently, then rubs the knuckles. Her nails are short, practical, and darkened from work. If she picked cotton that day, her fingers may still feel the motion, reaching and pulling, reaching and pulling. Sleep may come, but the hand remembers its task. Labour in cotton fields was often measured by output. Pickers could be weighed, recorded, compared, and pushed to meet or exceed quotas. Such numbers appeared neat in plantation books, which is convenient for books and cruel for bodies. The ledger might show pounds of cotton. It would not show the sharpness in a thumb joint at night. You hear a soft groan as someone lowers onto bedding. It is quickly swallowed, almost embarrassed. The sound is not theatrical. It is simply the body speaking before manners can stop it. Another person gives a quiet, sympathetic click of the tongue. Nobody makes much of it. This room knows the grammar of aches. A child asks whether the work will be easier when the rain stops. The question is innocent and terrible. An adult answers carefully, saying the ground will be heavy, but the air may feel cooler. It is not exactly comfort. It is honest enough for a child and gentle enough for bedtime. Hope sometimes travels in very small packages. A young woman near the hearth braids her hair with slow, tired fingers. She separates strands by touch, not by sight. Her arms lift, pause, lift again. Even grooming asks labour from sore shoulders, yet she continues, because morning will come with demands, and the body must be prepared. Cleanliness, order, and appearance can become forms of self-possession. The smell of damp hair oil mingles with smoke. It may be animal fat, plant oil, or another mixture saved for practical use. Hair care carries beauty, culture, comfort, and protection. It also offers moments of touch between women, parents, children, and friends. A comb moving through hair can be ordinary, tender, and painful. Sometimes all three. Scholars still differ over how much African hair practices survived in particular plantation communities by the mid-19th century. Braiding, wrapping, oiling, and grooming certainly held cultural significance in many black communities, but forced displacement, labour demands, material scarcity, and local exchange shaped those practices in complex ways. The past rarely offers a clean braid. A small wooden comb lies beside the hearth. Its teeth are uneven, and one has broken short. Someone has polished the handle through use. A comb seems modest until you imagine making one, keeping one, sharing one, and losing one. Then it becomes important. History likes hiding in small teeth. You feel the cabin's atmosphere thicken with fatigue. Not just sleepiness, but the heaviness that arrives when the body has been commanded too long. People lean rather than sit. Hands rest open in laps. Heads bow slightly. The storm outside gives permission for stillness, at least for this hour. Rain covers the world with grey patience, yet even rest must be managed. Someone checks that wet clothing is placed where it might dry. Someone moves kindling farther from the door. Someone covers the pot. Someone nudges a child away from the hearth edge. There is always one more small duty. The household does not maintain itself, despite what careless observers might imagine. A man takes a slow breath and presses his fingers into the muscles beside his knee. He winces faintly. Perhaps he stumbled in mud. Perhaps he lifted too much. Perhaps nothing happened except another day under a system that wore people down deliberately. Pain does not always require an event. Sometimes the event is repetition. The cabin offers shelter from immediate supervision, but not from awareness. People know when they must rise. They know what tasks may wait outside. They know who is ill, who is watched, who has angered someone powerful, who may be sold, who may be hired out, who may not return from an errand. Rest is edged with knowledge. Still, the room protects something. It protects a slower voice. It protects a hand on a wrist, a salve warmed by fingers, a child tucked closer, a joke muttered through pain. It protects the right to sigh where the field cannot hear. That is not enough, but it is not nothing. You listen as the adults speak in low tones about weather and work. Their words move around children's ears, careful but not false. Rain may delay one task and make another harder. Mud may slow wagons. A wet field may mean different labour near the barns, fences, or ditches. Plantation work shifts shape like water seeking lower ground. A woman mentions a hoe handle that splintered and had to be wrapped. A man answers that the handle was older than good sense. Someone gives a tired laugh. Tools break, people ache, and somehow the world expects gratitude for both. The sarcasm is soft, almost affectionate, because bitterness needs pacing if it is to last. The laughter loosens the room, shoulders ease. A child smiles without fully waking. The storm fills the spaces between breaths. Humour here does not deny suffering. It keeps suffering from owning every corner. It is a candle held low, not bright enough to change the room, but enough to make faces visible. You notice the older woman's hands again. They are still resting now, folded over one another. The fingers are bent slightly from years of work. In the firelight, those hands seem carved from warm brown wood. They have lifted, planted, cooked, washed, soothed, and perhaps buried. They have held more history than any ledger can carry. The mainstream record often counted enslaved people by age, sex, skill, and monetary value. It measured labour, births, deaths, and sales through the language of ownership. But inside the cabin, another record exists. It is kept in scars, lullabies, recipes, remembered names, favourite stories, and the practiced pressure of a healing hand. A small silence settles, the kind that comes when conversation has done what it can. Rain slides along the roof, the fire lowers, muscles soften into bedding and wall shadows. No one is comfortable in any easy sense, but discomfort has loosened its grip slightly. The cabin has become a place of temporary repair. You sit with that repair and feel its modest power. The ache of labour is not erased, it hums beneath the skin, waiting for morning. Yet here, beside smoke and coals, bodies reclaim a little of themselves. A wrist is wrapped, a foot is warmed. A child leans close, a tired laugh survives. The night holds these small recoveries without applause. Outside, the plantation remains soaked and waiting. Inside, soreness meets touch, silence, heat, and patience. You breathe the smoky air, listen to the rain's soft cover, and understand that rest here is not simple sleep. It is a quiet struggle to remain whole. You hear the first story begin almost without warning, as stories often do. No one announces a performance. No one sits taller or clears a throat with grand importance. A voice simply rises from the dimness near the hearth, low enough not to wake every child, warm enough to pull the waking ones closer. The teller is an older woman, though age here is not counted kindly. Her face holds lines made by sun, worry, laughter, and years of listening. Firelight moves across her cheeks as she leans forward slightly. The room shifts toward her. Even tired bodies understand when a story has entered. It changes the air. She begins with an animal because animals know how to carry truth in disguise. Perhaps it is Brer Rabbit, small and clever, always shorter than trouble and somehow taller by morning. Perhaps it is a turtle, a fox, a spider, or a buzzard with terrible manners. The child nearest the hearth smiles at once. The tale moves gently, with pauses for the rain. A greedy creature wants more than its share. A powerful creature believes strength is wisdom, which is always adorable and often incorrect. A small creature listens, waits, and escapes through wit. No one says the lesson too plainly. That would ruin it. Stories prefer to do their work sideways. Animal trickster tales were common in many enslaved communities and drew from African, European, and indigenous storytelling currents. Brer Rabbit stories became especially associated with African American folklore in the South. In a world where open defiance could be dangerous, tales of clever weakness overcoming blunt power carried more than entertainment. They gave listeners a map of survival. You feel how the children listen. One lies still, but awake, eyes reflecting the coals. Another presses fingers against the quilt edge. The youngest understands only the rise and fall of the voice. That is enough. A good story reaches people before every word is understood. It enters through rhythm first. The older woman gives the rabbit a sly voice, quick and sugary. Then she gives the fox a heavy voice, proud and foolish. Someone in the corner lets out a quiet chuckle. The fox sounds suspiciously like a certain kind of man who believes himself very important. Nobody names that resemblance. Naming can be expensive. The rain helps the story travel softly. It covers small laughter and hides the tiny bursts of pleasure that move around the room. The storm becomes a curtain, and behind that curtain, imagination has more room. In the glow of the hearth, the cabin is suddenly not only a cabin, it is a road, a swamp, a thicket, a moonlit clearing. A child asks whether the rabbit is scared. The storyteller pauses just long enough, then she says the rabbit is too busy thinking to be scared, which earns another smile from the adults. That answer is both comfort and instruction. Fear may come, but thinking must not leave. The lesson curls quietly into the child's mind. Historians still argue over how to trace the specific origins of many southern black folk tales. Some motifs resemble West African trickster traditions, while others clearly changed in the American South. Written collections often came later, shaped by collectors, dialect choices, and unequal power. The tales themselves are older than the notebooks that tried to catch them. The old woman continues, letting the rabbit escape through a gap nobody else noticed. A briar patch may appear, sharp and familiar. A hollow log may hide a secret path. A riverbank may become a judge. The world of the tale is practical. It knows thorns, mud, hunger, foolish pride, and the usefulness of appearing harmless. The story ends not with a moral, but with a little sound from the teller. It is almost a laugh, almost a sigh. The children know it means the rabbit has survived again. One whispers a question about what happened to the fox. The old woman says the fox is still somewhere, wondering how he lost. Naturally, he has formed no useful conclusions. A soft wave of amusement passes through the cabin. It is not loud. It is better than loud. It feels guarded, shared, and warm. Laughter near danger has a different texture from laughter without danger. It is smaller, maybe, but more concentrated. It glows like an ember under ash. Then another voice hums a line of song. It comes from a man near the wall, half under his breath. The melody rises and bends, carrying a weight no simple tune should be able to hold. Someone joins for a moment, then drops away. The song does not need a full chorus, it only needs recognition. Spirituals and sacred songs carried deep importance in enslaved communities. They could express grief, faith, longing, endurance, warning, and hope at once. Biblical stories of exile, bondage, deliverance, and wandering spoke powerfully in plantation life. A song about Jordan, Moses, or a promised land could be prayer, memory, and coded desire, all in one breath. The words are quiet, but their feeling fills the room. The rain outside seems to keep time, though rather loosely, because rain has never respected musicians. The melody stretches across the smoky air and rests above the sleeping children. You feel it in your chest, not as drama, but as a slow pressure. A woman adds a phrase, softer than the first. Her voice has a rough edge from smoke and fatigue. It is beautiful anyway. Beauty here does not require polish. It requires truth, and maybe a little breath left at the end of the day. The song holds both, carefully. Scholars still debate the boundaries between spiritually our work song, ring shout, hymn, and older African musical practice in different regions. Some forms were shaped by Christian worship, while others preserved rhythmic and communal patterns from Africa. Plantation owners sometimes encouraged religious singing, misunderstood it, feared it, or tried to control it. The music slipped through categories with impressive grace. The song fades before it fully ends. That, too, is common in tired rooms. A melody may break off when a child turns, when a cough starts, or when the singer remembers caution. No one complains. The unfinished line remains present, hanging in the rafters with the smoke. It does not need to be completed aloud. A younger man begins a different kind of story, one with more mischief. His voice is low and quick, and the children who are awake turn toward him with immediate suspicion and delight. He tells of a man who tried to steal roasted corn and blamed the moon for shining too brightly. The moon receives no apology. The tale is comic, but its comedy has teeth. Hunger sits behind it. Surveillance sits behind it. The absurdity of needing cunning to eat sits behind it. Everyone understands. The young man exaggerates the thief's dignity as he fails at every step. He makes the moon sound smug, which is unfair to the moon but good for the story. A quirky bit of folklore comes with the laughter. Some rural storytellers treated the moon as a witness, a timekeeper, or even a gossip, depending on the tale. Moonlight could guide travellers, expose secrets, or bless planting weather in folk belief. The moon, apparently, has always been overemployed. It shines, judges, and minds everyone's business. The children giggle into cloth, trying not to be shushed. One adult pretends sternness and fails almost immediately. The cabin's mood lightens. For a few breaths, the storm, the work, and the rules outside seem less able to crowd the room. Humour does not free anyone, but it can open a small window inside the mind. Then the older woman speaks again, and the room changes. Her next words are not exactly a story, not exactly family history, not exactly warning. She mentions a name. The name belongs to someone not present. It may be a mother, brother, daughter, husband, friend, or child separated by sale, death, hiring out, or distance. The name moves through the room with careful force. Nobody interrupts. A child may not know the whole meaning, but senses the weight. The woman tells one brief memory of that person's laugh, or the way they made baskets, or how they could find a lost cow in rain. Memory chooses small details because small details keep people human. Enslaved families were often threatened by sale and separation, especially in the expanding cotton South. Mississippi's growth depended heavily on forced migration through the domestic slave trade. People carried names, stories, skills, and kinship ties across painful distances. In the cabin, speaking a name could be an act of preservation. It kept absence from becoming erasure. You feel the atmosphere tighten with tenderness. The rain softens again, and the dripping cup resumes its small bright rhythm. A woman near the bedding wipes a child's nose with a cloth. The gesture is ordinary, but her eyes remain on the storyteller. Memory and caretaking sit side by side, as if they have done so for years. The old woman recalls a phrase the absent person used to say. The adults smile with recognition. One repeats it softly, getting the rhythm right. The phrase is not grand. It might be teasing, practical, stubborn, or oddly wise. Yet everyone treats it like a surviving relic. A person can live inside a sentence. Historians still struggle to reconstruct enslaved family memories because many were never written by the people who held them. Later interviews, plantation records, letters, advertisements, and court documents offer fragments. Those fragments are precious but incomplete. The silences are not empty. They are places where stolen voices should have been allowed to speak for themselves. A small child asks where the named person is. The room pauses. An adult answers with care, saying they are far from here, but remembered here. It is a hard answer, made soft for a small ear. The child accepts it for the moment, because children can carry mystery better than adults expect. The fire shifts, sending a brighter glow across the storyteller's hands. She rubs her thumb along one knuckle, perhaps easing stiffness, perhaps steadying herself. Then she turns memory back toward tail, as if guiding a boat away from a snag. The next story is shorter, gentler, meant to settle the room. She knows the night's balance. This tale involves a bird. It may be a blackbird, dove, owl, or whippoorwill. The bird flies between trees in storm weather, looking for a dry branch and singing anyway. Children like birds in stories because birds can leave. Adults like them for the same reason, although with a sharper ache. Wings are innocent until people envy them. The bird finds shelter in a hollow tree and shares it with a mouse, though the mouse complains about the singing. This detail delights one child, who whispers that mice have no manners. The storyteller agrees solemnly. Mice, she says, are known for opinions. The adults smile again. The room breathes easier. The story closes with the birds singing softly through rain until morning. No moral is offered. The song is enough. The children are sleepy now, their eyelids heavy, their hands slack on quilts. The older ones still listen, but from farther away. The voice has become part of the warmth, part of the smoke, part of the storm's gentle covering. You understand how stories work inside this cabin. They entertain, yes, because people need pleasure as surely as bread. They also teach caution, preserve memory, disguise criticism, comfort children, honour the absent, and stretch imagination beyond the plantation's borders. A tale can carry more than one load. It is a very efficient traveller. The last voice is almost a whisper. Someone offers a few words of prayer, not formal enough for a church, but shaped by need. The words ask for keeping, strength, mercy, and rest. They do not explain theology. They breathe it. The cabin becomes still around them, and even the rain seems to step lightly for a moment. You sit near the hearth and let the fading stories settle into the logs. The room smells of ash, damp quilts, herbs, and breath. The children sleep under tales of rabbits, moons, birds, and names remembered carefully. Outside, rain covers the yard. Inside, spoken words have made another kind of shelter, one no storm can easily tear away. You let your eyes wander through the dim cabin where objects wait in shadowed places. They seem ordinary at first, almost too humble to notice. A gourd, a bundle, a quilt corner, a carved peg, a bent nail, a scrap of ribbon. Yet nothing here is merely background. In a room with so little surplus, everything has earned its place. The firelight reaches the objects unevenly. Some appear bright for a moment, then slip back into darkness when a coal settles. Others remain hidden until someone moves, and their outline suddenly rises from the wall. You begin to understand that the cabin is not empty of possessions. It is full of small decisions, each shaped by need, skill, memory, and caution. Near the hearth sits a gourd dipper, polished by hands and smoke. Its bowl is pale inside, darker near the rim, with a handle worn smooth from use. It might carry drinking water, ladle broth, pour wash water, or scoop meal. It is lightweight, practical, and almost elegant without intending to be. Practical things often develop beauty accidentally. Gourds were widely used in rural households because they could be grown, dried, shaped, and put to many purposes. Enslaved people used them as dippers, bowls, bottles, storage vessels, and sometimes musical instruments. That is a plain historical fact. Sitting quietly by the fire, a plant becomes a tool becomes part of home. A child's finger traces the gourd's curved side, then quickly withdraws when an adult glances over. Some things are not toys, even when they look interesting. The child accepts this injustice with a sigh of theatrical suffering. Childhood, clearly, has always had a strong sense of drama. The adult hides a smile and returns to sorting a few items near her lap. Beside her lies a cloth bundle tied with careful knots. It may hold sewing scraps, thread, a needle, buttons, a charm, or something too private to name. The bundle is small enough to hide under bedding or tuck inside a chest. Its fabric has faded from many washings, but the knots are firm. The hands that tied it wanted certainty. You notice that the bundle is handled differently from tools or bowls. It is moved close to the body, not casually passed across the room. When opened, it reveals only a glimpse of folded cloth and a dull glint of metal. Then it closes again. The secrecy is gentle, but clear. Not every object invites your gaze. Historians still argue whether certain hidden bundles found at cabin sites should be read as spiritual caches, personal keepsakes, protective charms, or ordinary storage. The difficulty lies in the overlap. A needle can mend cloth, mark ownership, and carry symbolic meaning. A button can fasten a shirt, decorate a garment, or hold memory. Objects do not respect tidy categories. Near a wall peg hangs a small pouch, darkened by smoke and hand oil. It sways faintly whenever wind presses through the cracks. Such pouches might hold tobacco, salt, herbs, stones, coins, beads, or written scraps if writing was possible. You cannot know its contents. That ignorance matters. The past keeps some doors closed, and perhaps it should. A woman reaches for the pouch and removes a pinch of something fragrant. The scent is bitter, green, and slightly sweet. She adds it to a small cup of warm water near the hearth. It may be medicine for a cough, a stomach pain, or a child's restless sleep. It may simply be flavour. The room does not explain itself for visitors. The cup is tin, dented near the lip. A tiny split has been pressed nearly flat, extending its usefulness. Tinware in such households could come from ration distribution, purchase, barter, discard, or plantation stores. Its value lay not in shine, but in endurance. The cup catches firelight in weak flashes. It looks tired and heroic, which seems fair. You look toward the shelf above the hearth. A row of objects rests there, arranged with attention. A wooden bowl, a broken pipe stem, a bit of blue glass, a small shell, far from any sea, a clay marble or bead. Such things might seem random, but random is often a name given by people who do not know the story. Blue glass especially draws your eye. It glimmers like a drop of evening sky caught indoors. In some African American folk traditions, blue objects became associated with protection, especially against harmful spirits. The history of this belief is complex, and scholars trace different connections across African, Caribbean, and southern worlds. Still, the colour seems to hold the fire differently, almost as if it remembers water. A quirky tidbit rests in that blue shimmer. In later southern folk practice, to blue paint on porch ceilings was sometimes linked to keeping haints away. Though practical reasons like discouraging insects also appear, belief and usefulness often share a chair and refuse to identify who sat down first. Very considerate or very confusing. The shell near the glass feels stranger in Mississippi's inland darkness. It may have been traded, found in an old deposit, carried by someone from elsewhere, or kept for its look and touch. Shells appear in archaeological sites tied to adornment, exchange, and spiritual meaning. This one gives no answer. Its smooth curve holds silence as neatly as water. A man's pipe rests near the hearth, unlit and clean enough for later use. Tobacco could offer brief pleasure, trade, ritual exchange, or a pause in conversation. The pipe stem is worn where teeth have gripped it. Its bowl is dark inside. You imagine smoke curling from it on a drier night, mixing with jokes, worries, and news carried between cabins. Tobacco was part of plantation economies and daily life, though access differed widely. Some enslaved people grew small amounts, received it as ration or reward, bought it, traded for it, or did without. In a world of restrictions, even a pipe could mark a chosen pause. A small comfort can become large when comforts are scarce. On the floor near the bedstead, a wooden toy waits beside a child's blanket. It is barely more than a carved animal, perhaps a horse, dog, or creature known only to the child. One leg is shorter than the others, causing it to tilt with comic confidence. The child may not mind. Toys have survived worse design flaws. The toy carries tenderness. Someone spent time shaping it, sanding it with a knife, rubbing rough places smooth. Time is precious here, so a handmade toy is not minor. It says a child deserved delight, even in a world that denied children safety. That truth is quiet enough to ache. A few corn-shuck dolls may lie in a corner, their faces blank or marked with tiny stitches. Children made them, adults made them, or both. A doll can be a plaything, a teaching object, a companion, or a practice form for clothing and care. Its body smells faintly sweet and dusty. It rustles when moved, Historians still discuss how to interpret toys found around slave cabin sites. Some see evidence of childhood play and family attachment. Others emphasize how early labor and discipline entered enslaved children's lives. Both readings matter. A toy does not cancel suffering. It proves that childhood tried to live anyway, which is a brave and untidy fact. You notice a quilt folded near the bedding, its pattern dim under soot-softened light. The pieces are irregular, joined from old garments, feed sacks, scraps, and remnants. A sleeve becomes a square, a dress, hem becomes a border, a worn shirt becomes warmth for someone else. Cloth changes identity without complaint. The stitching is close in some places, wider in others. Several hands may have worked it. Perhaps one section belongs to a mother's careful rhythm, another to a daughter still learning. A quilt can be family labour made visible. It can carry touch across years. It can also be simply cold weather sold with scraps. Again, history insists on both. Some later stories claim quilts carried coded messages for escape, and those stories have become powerful in public imagination. Many scholars remain cautious because direct evidence is limited, yet quilts unquestionably carried memory, skill, labour, and beauty. Whether or not this one hides a map, it maps a household's hands. Under the bed, a stone sits near the wall, smooth and dark. It might have been used as a doorweight, hammer, nutcracker, grinding aid, or simply brought in because it felt useful. Beside it is a small iron nail, bent but saved. A bent nail is not trash here. It is future possibility with poor posture. Tools gather near the doorway, a hoe head waiting for a handle, a bit of rope, a wooden mallet, a basket with worn edges. These objects connect the cabin to fields, gardens, repairs, gathering, and chores. They also show how much labour entered the room even when no one was working outside. Survival requires maintenance. Maintenance is sneaky work. A small scrap of paper sits tucked in a crack, so carefully placed that it hardly seems accidental. It might be nothing, perhaps only wrapping. It might hold a mark, a figure, a name, a verse, or a memory copied by someone who could read. Literacy among enslaved people was often restricted by law or custom, especially after rebellions frightened slaveholders. Yet some learnt in secret, through family, free black communities, religious instruction, or sheer determination. You do not touch the paper. Some objects should be approached with reverence, even in imagination. A scrap with writing could be dangerous, precious, or both. Knowledge was treated as a threat by those who depended on ignorance. That alone tells you how powerful a few written words could be. The cabin seems to hold its breath around it. Scholars continue to debate the extent of literacy in enslaved communities before the Civil War, because records are uneven and secrecy was necessary. Owners often underreported or misunderstood what people knew. Some enslaved people concealed literacy for safety. The absence of record, in this case, may prove caution rather than absence of learning. Near the scrap of paper rests a button made of bone or shell. It is not attached to anything, yet it has been kept. Buttons are common finds at domestic sites, and they carry many possible stories. They close garments, replace losses, mark style, serve as counters, decorate toys, or become small treasures in children's hands. This button waits calmly, refusing to choose. A bead, dark red in the firelight, sits inside a shallow wooden bowl. Perhaps it came from a necklace, a trader, a discarded garment, or an older memory line. Beads have appeared in many African diaspora sites, sometimes interpreted as adornment, spirituality, trade, or identity. The bead is tiny, but its meaning may be large. Small things often enjoy this trick. The storm taps above you, and the cabin's possessions seem to listen. Each object has a sound when handled. The gourd knocks hollowly, the tin cup rings, The quilt whispers, the pouch rustles, the shell clicks softly against the shelf. These are the room's quiet instruments, played by daily need rather than entertainment. You feel the texture of the cabin through its things: smooth gourd, rough quilt, cold tin, warm wood, sharp nail, soft corn shuck, damp rope, bitter herbs. Each touch carries knowledge. People who owned little often knew their possessions intimately. They knew which bowl leaked, which peg held weight, which cloth could be trusted, which box should remain hidden. The objects do not form a single neat story. They form a cluster of possible lives: practical life, spiritual life, child life, work life, family life, secret life. This complexity is important. Enslaved people were not only labourers in fields, they were makers, menders, healers, parents, singers, gardeners, believers, skeptics, comedians, strategists, and keepers of things. The fire sinks lower, and the objects withdraw into softer darkness, yet they remain present, charged by use and touch. You understand that the cabin's secrets are not theatrical. They are not hidden trapdoors and dramatic clues. They are quieter than that. A preserved button, a folded paper, a blue shard, a toy leaning bravely on uneven legs. You sit among them with careful attention. The rain outside darkens the world, but inside, each small object makes a point against disappearance. These things were handled by people whose full stories were often denied, distorted, or never written. They remain, in memory and earth, as stubborn witnesses. They do not shout. They endure. The hearth gives one final bright pulse, catching the blue glass, the tin cup, and the polished gourd in a brief shared glow. For a moment, the room seems filled with tiny moons. Then the light softens again, and the cabin returns to shadow. The objects rest where hands have placed them, carrying use, secrecy, and the gentle weight of being kept. You feel the cabin settling round its sleeping and half-sleeping bodies, and the shape of kinship becomes clearer in the low light. It is not only a matter of blood, though blood matters deeply here. It is also the arrangement of blankets, the sharing of warmth, the guarding of children, the memory of names, and the quiet agreement that no one should be left alone with fear. A child shifts under a quilt and reaches across the bedding. Their hand finds an older sibling's sleeve, then relaxes. The gesture is tiny, almost invisible, but it carries trust. Children learn the map of safety through touch: a sleeve, a shoulder, a breathing body nearby. These are landmarks more important than roads. Near the hearth, an adult watches the children with an expression too tired to be sentimental. Love here is not soft in the way paintings sometimes imagine it. It is practical, alert, and stubborn. It checks the blanket. It saves the better bite. It listens for coughing. It remembers who startles during thunder. It works while exhausted. Enslaved families in Mississippi lived under constant threat of separation by sale, inheritance, debt, punishment, or forced movement. That is one central historical fact, and it shadows the cabin like weather. Marriage and parenting existed with deep meaning, but law did not protect them as fully binding rights. The heart made promises that the market could break. You sense that danger in the way people remain near one another. The cabin is crowded, yes, but closeness is not only inconvenience, it is also defense against disappearance. To sleep beside someone is to say, for this night, you are counted. To call a child by a chosen name is to insist that they belong to more than an inventory. A woman adjusts the smallest child's position, turning the little body away from a draught. The child does not wake. The woman's hand lingers near the child's cheek, not quite touching. Perhaps she's checking for fever. Perhaps she's simply feeling the presence of a life she loves. A parent's hand often knows more than words. The rain softens into a steady curtain outside, enclosing the room. The smell of wet clay and smoke wraps around everyone. Beneath it, you notice the faint scent of milk, herbs, wool, and old wood. The atmosphere feels close, but not empty. It is thick with relation. Every breath seems connected to another. A man and woman speak quietly near the wall. They might be husband and wife, though enslaved marriage was not usually recognized by law. Many couples formed unions through community customs, religious vows, shared households, and chosen commitment. Some ceremonies involved jumping over a broom, a practice remembered in African American tradition. The broom, apparently, has performed more social duties than most furniture. That quirky detail carries weight, but it should not be treated as a single universal rule. Some couples jumped a broom. Others had prayers, feasts, blessings, hand clasping, or simple public acknowledgement. Customs varied by region, plantation, church influence, and family memory. Historians still debate how widespread broom jumping was in the 1840s, because later accounts and local traditions do not always agree. The couple's voices are low enough that children will not fully hear. They discuss a person from another cabin, perhaps someone ill, perhaps someone expected to visit when rain allows. Their words are practical, but their faces reveal worry. Kinship spreads beyond one roof. The quarter is a network of aunties, uncles, cousins, neighbours, godparents, friends, and almost relatives created by care. In a world where official records might list a person with only a first name and a price, the community kept fuller identities alive. People knew who belonged to whom, who had been sold south, who had a mother far away, who shared a father, who needed watching, who could be trusted with news. Memory became a family tree built in spoken form. A child stirs and murmurs for someone not in the room. The sound passes through the adults like a small cold draught. A woman answers at once, using a soft name and a soothing phrase. The child settles, but the name remains in the air. It may belong to a mother, older sister, grandmother, or someone separated by circumstance. You feel how grief is managed here, not displayed fully, not hidden completely. It slips into lowered voices, careful songs, saved objects, and sudden silences. The cabin does not have space for grief to sprawl, so grief learns to sit in corners. It waits beside the bedding. It warms its hands at the same fire as everyone else. The threat of family separation was especially intense in the Cotton South, where the domestic slave trade moved many people from older states into expanding plantation regions. Mississippi's growth drew enslaved labor through sale and forced migration. Families were formed under that pressure, and many were torn apart by it. The cabin's closeness must be understood against that wide road of loss. An older woman reaches for a sleeping child and gently braids a loosened strand of hair away from the face. She may be the child's grandmother, aunt, neighbour, or caregiver by necessity. The exact title matters less than the function, though titles matter too. Enslaved communities often built extended care networks because children needed protection beyond a single pair of hands. Alloparenting, though the word belongs to scholars, is plain to see here. Older siblings watch younger ones. Elderly people teach stories and caution. Women nurse, tend, and guide children not always born to them. Men repair toys, share food, carry sleeping bodies, and teach how to read danger in a voice. Families both bloodline and labour. A small boy wakes enough to ask for water, his voice is thick with sleep. A teenage girl rises before the adults can move, takes the gourd dipper, and brings a little water carefully so it does not spill. She guides it to his mouth. He drinks, sighs, and turns away. She waits until he settles, then lies down again. That small act tells you about age inside the cabin. Childhood can be brief under slavery, because work begins early and responsibility comes quickly. Yet children are still children. They fear storms, crave stories, lose blankets, and ask questions at inconvenient times. The older girl's patience holds both truths. She is young, and she is already needed. Historians still argue about the age at which enslaved children's labour became systematic across different plantations. Some children began light tasks very early, caring for infants, carrying water, scaring birds, tending animals, or helping in gardens. Field labour often increased with age and strength. Records vary, and so did children's lives. No single age opens every door. The rain fades again, and you hear nearby cabins more clearly. A baby cries somewhere across the yard. A woman's voice rises and falls in response. The sound travels through wet darkness, softened by distance. No one inside seems surprised. A crying baby belongs to everyone's night, whether or not everyone voted on the matter. A man near the wall listens, then murmurs that the child sounds strong. It is a small blessing hidden inside a comment. Infant sickness could be frighteningly common in poor housing, harsh labour conditions, and limited medical care. Every strong cry could be annoying and reassuring together. Human life is very talented at being both. The older woman nods and shifts her blanket around her knees. Her joints ache, but her attention remains wide. Elder status in enslaved communities could bring respect, knowledge, and authority, though age did not guarantee rest. Older people might care for children, cook, mend, tend gardens, preserve memory, or continue field work if forced. The body aged under command, but wisdom gathered anyway. She speaks softly to the teenage girl, reminding her of a cousin's name and how that cousin is connected to another family on a nearby place. The girl repeats the names. This is not idle genealogy. It is a map of belonging. Names tell where help might come from, where news might travel, where sorrow has already passed. The room becomes a school without benches. Lessons move through whispers, corrections, and repeated names. Who married whom? Who was sold from Carolina? Who came from Virginia? Who has a brother upriver? Who knows the old prayer? Who must not be trusted with secrets? This knowledge is survival, folded into family talk. A mainstream account might focus on plantations as economic units, counting acres, cotton bales, tools, livestock, and enslaved labourers. Inside the cabin, the unit is different. It is the circle of people who remember one another. It is the person who saves a place near the fire. It is the hand that wakes when a child coughs. A little girl half wakes and complains that someone's elbow's in her ribs. The Q sleeper does not answer, being wisely unavailable. The older woman gently moves the elbow and whispers that peace must be maintained among the citizens of the quilt. The girl accepts this government and sleeps again. Honestly, some nations have begun with less diplomacy. You notice how humour eases crowded sleep. Too many bodies in too little space can create irritation, heat, cold feet, stolen blankets, and tiny household disputes. Yet joking softens the edge. A teasing phrase can prevent a quarrel. A nickname can turn annoyance into belonging. The cabin holds frustration, but it also holds methods for surviving frustration. Near the hearth, the couple's conversation lowers further. Perhaps they discuss a planned visit to another plantation, or a child who may be hired out, or a rumour from the big house. Their closeness is careful. A hand rests near another hand, not dramatically, just close enough to touch if needed. Love in this room conserves movement. Enslaved couples often faced practical obstacles to living together, especially when partners belonged to different owners. Some husbands and wives lived on separate plantations and visited at night or on allowed days. These abroad marriages, as scholars often call them, required effort, permission, risk, and endurance. The phrase sounds tidy. The reality was mud, distance, fear, and longing. Uncertainty surrounds how many couples in Mississippi lived this way, in particular counties during the 1840s. Surviving records capture fragments. not full emotional geographies. Some owners allowed visits because they saw benefit in family stability. Others restricted movement harshly. Couples themselves made the meaning, not the paperwork. Love did not wait for legal courtesy. The storm pushes one more gust through the cracks, and the children curl tighter. Bodies seek bodies. A boy presses his back against his sister. The smallest child's foot escapes the quilt again, and an adult tucks it away. This repeated foot rescue is apparently one of civilization's oldest chores. The foot remains ungrateful. You feel the touch of the floor through the bedding edge. It is cool, slightly damp, and hard under cloth. Shared bedding can mean discomfort, but also warmth. In winter, closeness saves heat. In summer, it may feel unbearable. Tonight, with rain smoothing the air, the warmth of others feels almost like shelter within shelter. A woman whispers a short prayer over the children. Not loudly, not as performance. Her words ask for keeping through the night, for health, for mercy, for the absent. The last part is nearly inaudible. You hear only the shape of it. Absence has its own sound, a hollow place in the sentence. The cabin's kinship includes those not under the roof. People sold away, people hired elsewhere, people buried nearby, people living in another quarter, another county, another state. The family circle is stretched, torn, tied again, and remembered aloud. It is not fragile because it breaks easily. It is fragile because so much force is always pulling at it, yet it is strong too. Strong in repeated names, strong in shared care, strong in children who know where to reach in the dark, strong in adults who rise though exhausted, strong in elders who teach connections no record will honour properly. The plantation may claim ownership, but it cannot own the meaning of mother, brother, beloved, or child. You sit in the smoky dimness and listen to the rain thinning on the roof. The cabin breathes with many sleepers, each held in some web of relation. Someone sighs, someone turns, someone's hand rests protectively over a small shoulder. The hearth glows low, and its light gathers the family circle without asking who the law recognizes. In this leaking, crowded room, kinship is not sentimental decoration. It is structure. It is shelter built inside shelter. It is memory against sale, tenderness against exhaustion, and names against erasure. You feel it in the shared quilt, the whispered warning, the saved bite, the careful prayer. The roof may leak, but beneath it, belonging still gathers itself close. You drift into the last dark hours, when night feels deepest because morning has not yet shown mercy. The cabin is quiet now, but not empty of movement. Sleep shifts through the room in slow turns, soft sighs, and faint rustles of cloth. The fire has fallen low, its coals covered in grey ash, with a red glow breathing beneath. Rain still falls, though weaker than earlier. It taps the roof in scattered patterns, as if the storm has grown tired of its own speech. Water slips from the eaves and lands outside with a patient splash. The air smells cooler now, washed clean at the edges, but smoke and damp bedding keep the cabin close. You feel the hour without needing a clock. It is the hour when dreams become strange and bodies grow heavy, the hour when even worry lowers its head for a moment. Yet the plantation day waits beyond the dark, as sure as the mud outside. Dawn has not arrived, but its demands are already forming. A woman stirs on the bedstead and listens, her eyes open, not fully awake, but trained by habit. She hears children breathing, coals settling, rain dripping, and nothing more. That nothing matters. No footstep at the door, no dog nearby, no shouted order. She closes her eye again, and the room loosens around her. In many plantation households, enslaved people's days began very early, especially during demanding agricultural seasons. Bells, horns, calls, or overseer routines could mark the start of labour. The exact rhythm varied by plantation, crop cycle, and weather. But the body learned anticipation. Even in darkness, muscles could seem to know that work was coming. You notice a man lying near the wall, one arm folded beneath his head. His sleep is not deep. His fingers twitch once, perhaps from a dream, perhaps from soreness. Mud dries on the edge of his trousers. One knee is bent carefully, as if the joint requires negotiation. The cabin allows rest, but not full release. A child turns and mumbles a few words from a dream. The sound is soft, almost watery. Another child answers without waking. A tiny murmur from under the quilt. Dreams pass between them like whispered nonsense. The smallest child sighs, then settles closer to warmth. Sleep gathers them in its untidy arms. Sleep has terrible housekeeping, but kind intentions. The hearth gives a muted pop beneath the ash. A tiny spark appears, glows, and vanishes. Someone has banked the fire well, preserving the coals for morning. That practical act can save time, labour, and frustration at first light. Fire carried across the hours is a kind of household continuity. The night keeps a seed of flame. You look toward the doorway, where darkness gathers around the lower boards. A little water has dried into dull streaks on the floor. The threshold smells of mud, rain, and wet wood. It is the cabin's edge, the place where warmth meets the wider system. Every home has a threshold. This one feels guarded by exhaustion. Outside, the yard is likely slick and shining. The paths between cabins have become soft channels, marked by footprints filling with water. Chickens sleep under whatever shelter they found. A mule stamps somewhere, displeased by dampness and possibly by existence in general. The air holds the mineral scent of soaked clay and the green scent of bruised plants. The storm has left the world heavier. Field rows will be muddy. Ditches may run full. Tools may need wiping. Wet clothing may not be dry enough to wear comfortably. Rain can bring cooler air, but also more labour. Weather has a gift for solving one problem by creating 3 smaller ones. It is very committed. Near the hearth, an older woman wakes and reaches for a cloth. She coughs once, covering her mouth, then waits until the sound passes. Smoke, dampness, chill, and age all press against the lungs. She touches her chest lightly and reaches for the small cup near her bedding. The liquid inside smells faintly of bitter herbs. Enslaved people used many forms of self-care and community care during illness, often because formal medical attention was limited, delayed, or controlled by owners. Household remedies mattered, as did nurses, midwives, root workers, and elders with practical knowledge. The cabin at night could become a place of observation, where coughs, fevers, and breathing were quietly monitored. Historians still debate how to measure sickness in enslaved communities from plantation records, because owners often wrote from the viewpoint of labour loss. A fever might appear as a work absence rather than a person suffering. A cough might not appear at all. The missing details force scholars to read sideways, through fragments, silences, and material traces. The older woman drinks, grimaces faintly, and lowers the cup. Whatever is in it has not been designed for pleasure. Medicine rarely troubles itself with charm. She lies back slowly, adjusting her shawl around her shoulders. Her hand rests on the edge of the bedding, close to a child's foot, ready to tuck it away if needed. The cabin seems suspended between sleep and waking. The roof no longer roars. The drips have become occasional. The night insects begin to test the damp world, one sound at a time. A cricket scratches from somewhere near the wall. Farther away, a frog calls in a puddled ditch. Then another answers. The outside world reassembles itself. A faint smell of ashes thickens near the hearth. Beneath it comes the sour scent of wet shoes, the sweetness of corn shuck bedding, and the stale warmth of many sleepers. You feel the rough blanket beneath your hand. Its fibres catch on your skin. The air is cool enough now that the blanket's scratch matters less than its weight. In the dark, the cabin's interior becomes less visual and more physical. You know the room by sound, temperature and pressure. The low ceiling holds warmth above. The floor keeps dampness below. The walls breathe through cracks. The bedding traps the smell of sleep. The hearth keeps its hidden red eye under ash. A man wakes enough to sit up and listen toward the door. His movement is slow, deliberate, and nearly soundless. He may be checking the weather, the animals, or only the uneasy feeling that sometimes arrives in the darkest hours. He hears nothing troubling. Still, he remains upright for several breaths. Habit has made caution more reliable than comfort. A patrol, an overseer, an owner, or a messenger could disturb a night in the quarters, though not every night brought interruption. Rules governing movement varied, and enforcement could be unpredictable. The uncertainty itself was part of control. People did not need a door to open every night in order to sleep lightly. Possibility was enough. The man lowers himself again. A child presses close to his side, drawn by warmth. His hand settles over the child's back for a moment, broad and still. The gesture is half asleep, but exact. Protection does not always wake fully to do its work. Sometimes it simply finds the shape it knows. You hear the faint creak of the rope from the bedstead, then the soft patter of water outside. The roof has stopped leaking in one place, but another drop begins near the shelf. It lands once, then again. Someone had moved the cup away too soon. The house, apparently, has opinions about confidence. A bowl is nudged back into place. The bowl receives the drops with patient little notes. Drop, pause, drop. The sound becomes part of the room's breathing. You realise that people living here must know every weak patch of roof, every draft line, every corner that moulds first, every place where ants come in, every board that complains underfoot. A cabin is learned through use. A pale change begins at the cracks around the doorway. It is not dawn yet. Not truly. More like darkness losing its thickness. The storm clouds still cover the sky, but somewhere beyond them, morning is preparing its grey account. The room remains shadowed, yet shapes begin to separate. A stool, a basket, a sleeping shoulder. The iron pot. A rooster calls from somewhere wet and offended. The sound is ragged, not majestic. Another answers, equally unimpressive but determined. The children do not wake. Adults do, not all at once, and not visibly at first. Breath changes. A hand shifts. Someone's eyes open in the dim light. The day has entered without knocking. Roosters were common timekeepers in rural spaces, though they were not precise, despite their confidence. People also use stars, light, bodily habit, bells, horns, and household routines to judge time. In quarters where clocks were rare, dawn was read through sound and sky. Nature provided the schedule, while slavery decided the cost. You feel a quiet heaviness settle over the room. The few hours of shelter are thinning. Not gone yet, but thinning. The woman on the bedstead turns carefully so she does not wake the smallest child. Her face is calm, but her jaw tightens. She lies still for one extra breath, claiming what little remains of horizontal life. A young person near the floor opens one eye, sees the grey doorway, and shuts it again with admirable optimism. No one corrects this strategy at once. The cabin allows the brief fiction. Rain has cooled the world, the quilts are still warm, and duty can wait exactly 3 more heartbeats. Then someone whispers a name. The name wakes the room more effectively than thunder. A child groans softly. A teenager rolls onto an elbow. The man near the wall sits up, rubbing his face. The older woman adjusts her shawl and reaches for the cup. These movements are unceremonious, intimate, and resigned. Morning has no interest in making a dramatic entrance. The first tasks begin in near darkness. Ashes are stirred to find live coals. A dry twig catches with coaxing breath. The glow strengthens slowly. red to orange, then flame. Someone lifts the pot and checks what remains inside. Another person folds bedding away from the damp edge of the floor. A child is urged to sit up. The smell of rekindled fire sharpens the air. Smoke rises reluctant and bitter, then begins to draw. The cabin wakes by scent as much as sound. Damp wool, warm ash, human breath, old food, rain-washed mud, a little herb crushed underfoot. Morning in a poor room is never one clean smell. It is a committee. A woman wraps cloth around her hair with tired precision. Another smooths a child's shirt, tugging it into place. A man reaches for shoes that are not fully dry and pushes his feet into them anyway. The leather resists. He winces, then exhales through his nose. Shoes, like empires, can be deeply unreasonable. The children are roused gently, then less gently, because time tightens. One child clings to the quilt as if negotiating with fate. An older sibling pulls the quilt away and receives a glare of enormous betrayal. The adults ignore this household tragedy. There will be larger troubles today. The child eventually sits, hair wild, eyes accusing, dignity wounded. Breakfast may be little more than leftovers, cornbread, or something warmed quickly. The pot's contents are checked and shared with the speed of practice. No one eats lazily. Food must meet the clock of labour. A few mouthfuls can matter greatly when hours of work wait outside. The body does not run on symbolism, however much history enjoys it. The grey light grows. The walls show their roughness again. Smoke marks, patched cracks, hanging cloth, a basket near the door, a gourd on the shelf. Night's softness begins to retreat from every object. The cabin becomes practical, visible, and busy. The storm's hush gives way to the small friction of preparation. A mainstream fact returns with the morning. Enslaved people's time was not fully their own. Household routines, field labour, plantation rules, and owner demands governed the day. Yet within that pressure, people made choices wherever possible. They shared food, ordered space, cared for children, preserved coals, saved objects, and carried knowledge from one hour to the next. Historians still discuss how to balance accounts of domination with accounts of agency in daily slave life. Too much emphasis on control can flatten human creativity. Too much emphasis on resilience can soften the cruelty of bondage. The cabin holds both realities without resolving them for anyone's comfort. It is not here to make interpretation easy. A final light rain taps the roof. Softer now, almost apologetic. The apology is not accepted, but the sound is pleasant. Someone opens the door a little, and cool wet air spills in. The yard outside appears silver-grey and muddied, with puddles reflecting a pale sky. The world smells freshly washed, though not made new. You feel the threshold pulling the room outward. The day waits in mud, fields, barns, kitchens, gardens, and paths. Inside, the hearth has been revived, bedding folded, children stirred, shoes forced onto sore feet. The cabin has done its night work. It sheltered, warmed, listened, and kept a little fire alive under ash. The last dark hour loosens its hold. Sleep leaves reluctantly, like a guest with nowhere better to go. The storm drifts away in low clouds. The cabin's warmth thins as the door opens wider. You breathe in smoke and rain together, feeling the ache of departure in the air. Morning has arrived, pale and damp, carrying work in its hands. You stand in the grey doorway as dawn spreads across the quarter, pale and wet after the long storm. The cabin behind you still holds its warmth, but the outside air moves in cool sheets around your face. Mud shines along the path. Puddles tremble under the last light rain. Smoke rises from nearby chimneys in thin blue ropes, leaning with the morning breeze. The world looks washed, though nothing essential has been cleansed. The fields remain beyond the cabins, waiting under heavy clouds. The plantation road lies rutted and slick. The fences drip. The trees hold water on every leaf, releasing it in sudden little showers when wind moves through them. Morning arrives quietly, but not kindly. It brings tasks wrapped in mist. You feel the threshold beneath your feet, worn smooth by repeated crossings. So many feet have passed here, leaving for labour, returning with hunger, stepping out to fetch water, carrying babies, visiting neighbours, answering calls, facing fear. A doorway can become a record without writing a single word. This one has held both departure and return. Behind you, the cabin begins its practical waking. Bedding is folded tighter against the wall. A pot is shifted closer to the revived fire. A child is guided into a shirt with one sleeve turned stubbornly inside out. Someone finds the sleeve and fixes it with impressive patience. Clothing, like weather, enjoys testing civilization before breakfast. The smell of morning food rises faintly. Warm cornbread, thin broth, smoke, and damp cloth mingle with the scent of rain-washed mud. A woman lifts the pot lid and studies what remains inside. She does not complain. She measures with her eyes, then portions with her hand. The day begins with arithmetic disguised as care. A man steps outside and looks toward the fields. His shoes sink slightly in the mud. He pauses, testing the ground's mood. The soil is soft, clinging, and determined. Every step today will carry extra weight. The air feels cooler than the day might become, but Mississippi heat has a talent for returning when least appreciated. In 1845, Mississippi stands near the center of an expanding cotton economy. Cotton plantations depend on enslaved labor, forced movement, credit, land hunger, and global textile demand. That mainstream fact reaches into this small morning. It shapes the rows, the roads, the rules, and the bodies stepping from cabins into the damp light. Yet the morning is not only an economic fact, it is also a child blinking at the doorway. It is an older woman warming her fingers over coals. It is a young girl tying her haircloth with quick, practiced movements. It is a man checking a repaired shoe. The system is vast, but life keeps appearing in particulars. Nearby, other cabin doors open. Voices move low through mist. Someone calls a name. Someone answers from under a roof edge. A baby cries, annoyed by the project of waking. A rooster offers another ragged opinion from the yard. Chickens scratch at wet ground with the stubborn optimism of creatures who believe breakfast is hidden everywhere. You hear a wooden bucket knock against someone's leg as water is carried. The sound is hollow and steady. Wells, springs, barrels, and streams matter at this hour. Water must be fetched for cooking, washing, children, animals, and the day's small needs. A household wakes through water as surely as through fire. The bucket carrier walks carefully, avoiding deeper mud. The handle creaks under weight. Cold water slaps the sides with each step. A few drops spill down the person's skirt or trousers, darkening the cloth. They do not pause. Morning work stacks itself quickly, and every errand seems to have invited 3 relatives. A woman at the doorway shakes out a blanket, sending a faint cloud of smoke smell into the damp air. The blanket snaps once, softly, then folds over her arm. Its surface is rough, patched, and still warm where children slept. That warmth disappears quickly outside. She carries it in, preserving what remains. Even heat is gathered and saved. Historians still argue about how to understand cabins like this in the broader landscape of slavery. Some scholars emphasize them as spaces of family, culture, and resistance within violent constraint. Others stress how poor housing, surveillance, and material deprivation reveal the power of slaveholders. Both interpretations are necessary. The cabin is neither simple refuge nor simple prison. It is painfully both. You look at the clay between the logs, damp around the edges. You see places repaired by hand, places where smoke has written dark layers, places where rain found weakness. The cabin is a structure of compromise, necessity, coercion, and skill. It was not built for comfort as a first concern. Still, people made comfort inside it where they could. A small blue shard on the shelf catches the new light through the open door. It glimmers for a moment, then dulls again when someone passes. Such fragments can draw many meanings, from decoration to protection to memory. Archaeologists sometimes find small objects like beads, glass, buttons, and shells around slave quarters. Interpretation remains careful, because objects speak in accents we do not always understand. A quirky morning detail appears near the hearth. Someone has placed a flat iron near warm coals, not for fancy elegance, but to press stubborn cloth when time allows. A heavy iron could smooth garments, warm bedding, or serve as a useful weight. Household tools here are rarely lazy. They prefer multiple occupations, which is admirable and slightly exhausting. The child with the difficult sleeve now sits on a low stool, eating slowly while still half asleep. The hair stands in soft, rebellious tufts. An older sibling wipes crumbs from the child's chin with more force than grace. The child scowls. The sibling scowls back. Family affection often wears a practical face at dawn. A woman speaks a warning about staying away from the deepest puddles. The child nods with obvious plans to ignore this guidance as soon as convenient. Childhood tests mud the way scholars test theories, with confidence and limited concern for laundry. The adult knows this. Her expression says she's met children before, and they remain suspicious. The mist begins to thin. Beyond the quarter, the cotton fields emerge in muted rows. The plants are dark with rain, their leaves holding beads of water. Depending on the season, the field might demand hoeing, planting, chopping, picking, clearing, or repair. The exact task matters. The larger truth is that labour waits, and bodies know it. A horn, bell, voice, or simply shared habit begins to pull people outward. The sound is not loud in your imagination, but it changes the air. Conversations shorten. Food is finished. Cloth is tied. Tools are lifted. Children are directed. Those too young for fieldwork remain with caregivers, older siblings, or household tasks. No one is outside the system's reach. You feel the cabin's warmth behind you thinning as people leave. The room that held stories, sleep, food, and fear becomes quieter, more exposed to daylight. Fire still lives in the hearth, but the bright human circle loosens. A home can feel most tender at the moment people must step away from it. A man pauses at the threshold and looks back once. His glance is brief, but not empty. He sees the children, the coals, the woman by the pot, the folded blanket, the roof that leaked, the shelf of small things, the place where his body rested. Then he turns toward the mud. There is no grand speech. The day does not require one. Enslaved people resisted slavery in many ways, from escape and revolt to work slowdowns, tool breaking, feigned illness, negotiation, cultural preservation, family building, and secret learning. Not every act looked dramatic. Some resistance was woven into staying human under conditions designed to reduce people to labour. The cabin helped hold those human threads, even when the larger fabric was torn. Scholars continue to debate how to name and measure everyday resistance. Some warn against calling every survival practice resistance, because survival could also be forced by necessity. Others argue that preserving family, memory, culture, and selfhood under domination was profoundly oppositional. The question matters, but the lives themselves mattered more than our categories. You watch a woman tuck a small object into the fold of her clothing before stepping out. It might be a charm, a scrap, a tool, a keepsake, or simply something she does not want misplaced. The motion is quick. Private meaning travels close to the body. What cannot be protected by law may be protected by cloth, memory, and vigilance. Rain has stopped now. Drops continue falling from the trees, but the sky lightens toward pearl grey. The smell of wet leaves, ash, and mud fills the yard. A distant wagon wheel grinds through softened earth. somewhere. A mule complains again, possibly maintaining a lifelong argument with existence. The sound would be comic if the morning were less heavy. The cabin stands behind you, low and rough, but no longer silent in your understanding. It holds the warmth of a hearth, the scratch of wool, the sting of smoke, the dampness of rain, the murmur of stories, the ache of labour, the presence of children, and the pressure of sorrow. It is small, yet history crowds inside. You do not turn it into a symbol too quickly. That would be unfair. It was a real place, or many real places like it, lived in by people with preferences, tempers, jokes, skills, fears, faith, doubts, and memories. They were not simply suffering figures arranged for later pity. They were complete human beings forced into an incomplete freedom. The path away from the cabin glistens in the new light. Footprints fill with water almost as soon as they're made. That seems right somehow. The world tries to smooth over marks, but marks remain in other ways, in soil, in stories, in descendants, in objects dug from the ground, in songs that outlive the night that first carried them. The cabin door stays open for a little while, letting smoke drift outward. Inside, the hearth glows softly, banked and ready. A bowl sits near the wall to catch the last drip. A quilt rests folded, holding the shape of sleep. The blue shard waits on the shelf. The small toy leans bravely where it was left. You stand there gently, with no desire to own the scene. The morning belongs to those who lived it. You may only witness, listen, and carry the lesson with care. The storm has passed, but the weather of history remains. It asks for attention without spectacle, compassion without simplification, and memory without pretending the pain was picturesque. Now the day broadens. People move toward their tasks through wet grass and clay. The cabin remains, warming itself around its coals. Its rough walls keep the night's breath for a little longer. Smoke, rain, and human touch linger in the doorway. Then the grey morning takes the shapes farther away, one step at a time. Let the picture soften now. Let the muddy path grow quieter beneath the pale sky. Let the cabin recede into mist, still holding its hearth, its folded quilt, and its careful little shelf of kept things. You do not need to hold every sorrow tightly. You can honour it gently, like an ember carried in a covered pan. The rain has moved on, leaving only beads of water on leaves and a coolness in the air. The fields fade into grey-green distance. The voices become low and indistinct. Even the rooster quiets, having apparently completed its important civic duties. The world breathes out. You rest your attention on the hearth. Not the smoke, not the labour waiting outside, but the red centre under ash. It glows quietly, neither bright nor gone. It asks for nothing except patience. Around it, hands have warmed, food has simmered, children have leaned close, and stories have found their way through darkness. Let your breathing follow that glow. Slow in, slow out. The cabin is still. The rain is only memory on the roof. The storm has become a soft smell in the wood. The clay floor cools. The quilt settles. The little blue shard catches no more light, but remains where it belongs. Far away, morning continues without asking you to follow. You may stay with the quiet. You may leave the door half open in your mind, where mist moves gently and no sharp sound enters. History can be heavy, but tonight it can be held with tenderness, not made lighter by forgetting, but made bearable by careful remembering. The fire lowers further. Red turns to rose, then to a darker warmth. Smoke thins into the rafters. The cabin breathes once more, soft as sleep. You feel the last heat against your palms, the last coolness at your back, and the last hush of rainwater falling from leaves outside. Rest now. The story has given what it can. The night has passed through storm, hearth, memory, and dawn. Let the images drift apart like smoke over wet fields. Let the cabin grow small, then smaller, until only warmth remains. Hold that warmth lightly, let it fade. Sleep well. End of script. Sleep well.